We continue with our analysis of the ANC's 111th anniversary celebrations and President Ramaphosa's address. His address focused mainly on South African energy crisis and the ANC's unity and renewal. For more analysis, I'm joined by political analyst Dr. Thapelo Tselapedi. Dr. Thapelo, appreciate your time this afternoon. What for you comes to mind when you listen to what President Cyril, or the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa, had to say this afternoon at that 111th celebration for the ANC?
Look, I think for me, the President touched on a range of matters that I think things that are of national priority. And I think things that are a growing concern for a lot of South Africans, and things that obviously the ANC created in government, and things that they also need to address. So I think he touched on a lot of issues that people want addressed, particularly the issue around energy, on Eskom. Obviously, there's a little bit of everything for everybody around the issues of expropriation of land, the issues around youth employment, and the issues around experience there. So I think a wide range of issues were touched on: security, violence. But this is not new in the ANC. The ANC understands South African society, understands the weaknesses institutionally of the state and the problems of society. I think there's a good grasp of those issues. I think, unfortunately, what underwrites all of this is, again, the weaknesses of the state, particularly at the level of province and regional, at the level of the municipality and the provinces. So those things, for me, at the level of the state, they've not been quite addressed. But I think that's where the rubber hits the road. Issues also around implementation.
So I'd like to focus a little bit on the Nakedi Brothers, the two boys who were subjected to violence by white men in Muscle Sport on Christmas Eve, I think it was. And the fact that President Cyril Ramaphosa, so whilst he is president of ANC today at the January 8th celebration, he's also president of the country, and he's brought in these two youngsters who are obviously traumatized by what happened, as are their relatives. But he's also put it out there nationally that this is not acceptable. What do you read into this?
What do we?
So what do you make of that, the statement that Cyril Ramaphosa is making?
Look, I think obviously Cyril Ramaphosa needs to be able to address problems in a constituency that is not traditionally seen to be representing, touching on subjects that traditionally he seems not to necessarily be touching on. So obviously instances around racism, obviously here he's zeroing in around issues of what are black development and so forth, or what are the problems that black people experience in the country. So I think it's quite important that he does so. You will remember at the beginning of the first term, there was a lot of issues around reconciliation, making sure that black and white people come together, without necessarily addressing instances of racism. And I think, part of the problem here is that we see instances of racism as just sort of spontaneous outbursts and not necessarily as systematic issues bedeviling, I think, the country. So I think it's important that he's addressing these issues that I think pertain to a constituency outside of his perceived traditional base. Given the issues around his, the perception around white capital, that within the ANC of a different faction who view him as just very liberal, very neoliberal, and not necessarily concerned with issues pertaining to black people. So this is not a surprise. He's moving into his second term at least once after elections, and he needs to be able to put a fork in the road and say that this will be what then carries his presidency. And in a sense, he needs to also provide unity inside the ANC to be able to then address all of these contentious issues.
Well, Dr. Thapelo, let's look at what's before the ANC and the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa over the next 5 years, but also importantly, what's ahead of them ahead of next year's election. Now, breaking it down into, there are a number of priority areas, those that impact the ANC directly, such as renewal and unity, which has been spoken about. In fact, some of the alliance partners have called out the ANC for some of these issues. And then there are those issues that affect you and I, that affect the common man on the street. Let's look at those two sets of scenarios and look at what are his priority areas, what capacity does the ANC and Cyril Ramaphosa have to address those issues, and how quickly do you see them being implemented?
I mean, look, I think it's going to be very difficult. In a sense, the issues that you're talking about are about addressing organizational issues of the party, the ANC, but also addressing some of the limitations or weaknesses of the state as it responds to addressing some of the developmental issues of South African society. And I think it's going to be very difficult for the president to be able to salvage both without perhaps weakening or compromising the one. I think, for me, the most pressing issues, as we've seen for the past, 3 years in his presidency, 3 years or 4 years so, he's been looking at issues around the rule of law, making sure that state institutions are stabilized. We're looking at SARS, we're looking at ESCOM. I think for the most part, the most important priority has to be around making sure that the state is on par, that you have competent officials that are able to address issues, that understand legislation, and we are dealing with a whole host of issues. We saw that last year there was issues around security. The police did not react quite speedily on a range of issues. So I think that would be the pressing reality. For issues around renewal, I can only imagine that they will be secondary. This is not to say that there has not been any movement. There's been the step-aside rule as well, and it's quite clear that the ANC, through the president now in the January 8th statement, has made it clear that the rule is there to stay. Again, it's going to be difficult, I think, to hold on to that. The renewal efforts of the ANC are cultural, they're culturally based. These are not political or economic. The problem is the political culture of the ANC, and I think that's going to be very difficult to undo. And I think what brings a lot of the ANC officials or the conferences together is really how there's a lot of consensus around financial deals, whether it's this tender or that tender, being able to buy this delegate or buy another delegate, buy this delegate via a tender and so forth. So I think there's a political culture issue here that the ANC will need to grapple with. But I think the most immediate priority for the ANC right now would have to look at the state and to ensure that there is security for women, that they are able to address issues of GBV, address issues of unemployment. But certainly, I think the issues around organizational renewal will be secondary to the ANC.
Now, again, we have to look at 2024 election, and certainly a number of factors by which the ANC will be judged at the polls. Now, looking at some of those issues, we're talking about energy, for instance, as prime amongst those issues. What resolve, what can Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC do ahead of the next election? Because it's impacting business, it's impacting employment. Unemployment figures, especially amongst the youth, are at record levels at the moment.
I mean, the issue around electricity and ESCOM particularly has huge ramifications. I mean, there's a lot of discussions among young people about the fact or the possibility that South Africa is collapsing, really. I mean, if you look at the state of municipalities, the secondary towns, it is not obviously just an issue of electricity. There's the potholes, problem with water. But I think obviously the issue of ESCOM is a big problem. But my worry is that there has been a long, drawn-out discussion on the issue of ESCOM. You'll remember that the current CEO, Director, had when he stepped into the position of CEO, he had promised us that give him 18 months, and in 18 months he will have solved the issue of electricity. That did not happen. Report after report, the parliament, nothing came from that. And in fact, you will remember also President Cyril Ramaphosa was part of the war room when he was deputy president to deal with issues of ESCOM. Nothing came from that. So I'm not quite sure that there's a sort of a ready solution to the matter of electricity. There's obviously issues around unbundling or privatization of ESCOM into different aspects. But we know that generally privatization tends to lead to escalation of costs. So there's a lot of, I think, balancing of the table with regards to that. But my biggest fear, again, of this issue is that quite a number of people are finding it quite easier to look outside of the country and go work, leave the country perhaps for a few years and then come back. And this obviously has implications for the sort of labor and skilled labor that we have in the country, because that's becoming a big debate.
Now, if the ANC, as you suggest, is unable, or the ANC government is unable to deal with some of these issues, such as energy and obviously its implications on load shedding, how do they keep their current voters for the next election?
Look, I think there's a sort of dissonance, or cognitive dissonance, with how people talk about the ANC. On the one level, there's a sort of nostalgia about what the ANC represents. And obviously then, there's a different cohort of citizens who have benefited from the ANC, whether it's from NSFAS or a tender or basic education or indigent policy, that because of those benefits owe allegiance to the ANC and therefore vote for the ANC. So at one level, there's this sort of discussion, well, the ANC is messing up, but I'm still going to vote for the ANC. That's a dissonance here that's happening. But also at the same time, ANC members, national leaders, when they talk about we're doing this for the people, let's put Batho-Pele principles ahead of the policy programs. At the same time, that's also underwritten by municipal officials doing work at a certain time so that they can be paid a lot more. It's underwritten by municipal officials giving their rents tenders. It's underwritten by a lot of nasty things that happen at municipal and provincial level that I think weakens the resolve at the national level. So I can't imagine, of course, that the ANC is going to increase. The ANC has been decreasing for a number of elective years. And this next year, the next national elections, we are going to see again the ANC losing. It's not going to be a huge margin. I suspect they'll still be just above 50% to be able to create a government constituted by the ANC alone. But I think what accounts for a lot of the vote for the ANC is just this dissonance, where people are not able to connect the issues of underdevelopment, inequality, and poverty at the local level with the problem of the ANC and the problem of organizational culture it has.
Well, on the sidelines of the ending of the 55th conference of the ANC, the new ANC Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, said that if individuals within the ANC were not performing within government, then they would be replaced. So he didn't mince his words, certainly, about that. Can we make anything of this? Does this offer an opportunity when that cabinet reshuffle does eventually happen, if it does, for President Cyril Ramaphosa to come up with a new look cabinet that is energized, invigorated, and ready to work for the people of South Africa?
Look, I think we have to take that with a pinch of salt. You need to understand that the constituting of government, whether national, provincial, or local, is not based on competency necessarily. This is based on political logic, and by that I mean it's based on who has constituency where in the ANC, and given their constituency, big or not, they're able to get this position to be a minister or deputy minister, to be premier MEC, or to be an MMC at the local government level. So I don't think it's quite easy to say that people who are competent will be taken out. That's not going to be the case. I think certainly you cannot, as an MEC, for example, take out a director general or director who's quite important for your own sustenance of your political career. That's going to be hard. If that person is not competent in their job, but they are able to give value or provide value outside of government, inside the party, those people can't just easily be taken out. If they are, they will be probably shifted elsewhere. We've seen this before. So I think as South Africans, we've got to take that with a pinch of salt. This is not your merit-based system where the most competent individuals are the ones that are retained in government.
Thapelo, appreciate your time. That was political analyst Dr. Thapelo Tselapedi.